If you ask any person on the street to name the greatest steam locomotive ever built, they will almost certainly give you the same answer. The Union Pacific Big Boy. It is the celebrity of the railroad world, a massive articulated beast that has become the undisputed symbol of American industrial might, with its 488 four-wheel arrangement and its terrifying size drawing millions of fans to watch it thunder down the tracks even today. We are told over and over again in books, documentaries, and museums that the Big Boy was the ultimate machine, the king of the rails, and the pinnacle of steam technology that crushed every other engine in existence with its sheer brute force. But what if I told you that history has been lying to you, or at least leaving out the most important chapter of the story because the real champion was the famous giant you see on t-shirts and posters? What if I told you that there was another engine? A machine so powerful and so technologically advanced that it actually broke the testing equipment designed to measure it, yet it has been completely erased from the modern world. This is not a conspiracy theory, but a documented engineering fact that has been buried under decades of scraping and forgotten paperwork. While the Union Pacific was building their mountain climbing monsters to haul freight over the Wasatch Mountains at slow speeds, the Pennsylvania Railroad, the standard railroad of the world, was secretly cooking up something far more ambitious and dangerous in their workshops. They didn't just want a locomotive that could pull heavy trains. They wanted a machine that could pull massive tonnage at highway speeds, a concept that was almost physically impossible for steam technology at the time. They created a ghost, a locomotive that officially produced nearly 8,000 horsepower in static Tesla, figure that shatters the Big Boy's 6,200 horsepower rating, but you have likely never heard its name because not a single one of them exists today. This engine was the Pennsylvania Railroad Class Q2, and it was a mechanical titan that lived fast, worked harder than anything else on rails, and died young in a tragedy of bad timing and corporate ruthlessness. Imagine standing next to a track in 1945, feeling the ground shake, not just from weight, but from the violent, high-frequency hammer blow of a locomotive designed to run at speeds that would tear a normal freight engine apart. The Q2 was not built like a normal train. It was a duplex, a strange and risky design that split the driving wheels into two separate groups on a rigid frame to reduce the terrifying forces that occur when heavy steel pistons move back and forth at 50 miles per hour. It was a masterpiece of late steam engineering, a final, desperate scream of defiance against the incoming diesel era, and for a few brief years, it was arguably the most potent land vehicle on the planet. But unlike the Big Boy, which had a long career and was lovingly preserved, the Q2 was treated like a disposable tool, a weapon of war that was discarded the moment the fighting stopped. The mystery of the Q2 is not just about its raw power, but about why such a superior machine was wiped off the face of the earth with such extreme prejudice that we don't even have a single driving wheel left to look at. Why would a railroad build the most powerful steam engine in history, prove that it worked, and then ruthlessly cut every single one of them into scrap metal less than 10 years later? As we dive into this story, you have to ask yourself if the Big Boy is famous because it was truly the best, or simply because it was the only one that survived the cutter's torch. The story of the Q2 is a reminder that history is written by the survivors, and sometimes the strongest warriors are the ones who are forgotten the fastest. We are about to open the files on the Pennsylvania Railroad's ultimate gamble, a machine that pushed the laws of physics so hard that it may have actually doomed itself. End of section 1. If you are shocked that an engine stronger than the Big Boy has been totally forgotten, you unbelieve the engineering insanity that made it possible and the fatal flaw that was hiding inside its massive boiler. Stick around, because the numbers we are about to reveal change everything you know about steam. To understand why the Q2 was such a freak of engineering nature, you first have to understand the impossible problem that the Pennsylvania Railroad was trying to solve in the middle of the 1940s. While other railroads were happy dragging coal trains at a walking pace, the Pennsylvania Railroad needed to move massive amounts of wartime freight at passenger train speeds, which required a level of horsepower that simply didn't exist in conventional steam locomotives. When you make a steam engine bigger, the pistons become so heavy that moving them back and forth at high speed creates a hammer blow effect that literally smashes the track to pieces and shakes the crew to death. The engineers at the PRR Altoona Works decided to solve this by splitting the engine in half, creating a duplex design with two sets of cylinders and two sets of driving wheels mounted on a single rigid frame, essentially building two engines in one body to balance the forces. The result was the Q2, a 4464 behemoth that looked like a standard steam engine on steroids. But hidden inside its streamlined boiler was a heart that pumped out power on a scale that terrified the people testing it. When they strapped the Q2 to the stationary test plant in Altoona massive treadmill, 4 trains used to measure performance, the engineers watched in disbelief as the needles on the dynamometer climbed higher and higher. The Big Boy, for all its fame, was estimated to produce around 6,200 drawbar horsepower, a respectable number that allowed it to conquer steep grades. But the Q2 kept climbing past 6,000, then past 7,000, and finally peaked at an earth-shattering 7,987 horsepower. a figure so high that it stands as the highest proven power output ever recorded for a steam locomotive on a static test plant. This wasn't just a marginal victory. It was a complete domination of the record books, proving that the Q2 could do the work of two normal locomotives while moving at speeds that would leave a big boy in the dust. The Q2 was designed to haul 125 loaded freight cars at 50 miles per hour, a feat that required a constant, brutal output of steam that would have drained the boiler of a lesser engine in minutes. To feed this hunger, the Q2 was equipped with a massive firebox and a sophisticated boiler system that consumed coal and water at a rate that baffled logistical planners, turning the tender into a whirlpool of disappearing resources. It was a hot rod in the shape of a freight train, a machine that traded efficiency and gentleness for raw, unadulterated speed and power. However, this incredible performance came with a dark side that the engineers hadn't fully anticipated, a flaw that would haunt the crews who had to operate these beasts in the real world. Because the Q2 had two sets of cylinders but a rigid frame, the weight distribution changed constantly as the water sloshed around and the engine moved over an uneven track, causing one set of wheels to suddenly lose their grip. When you have nearly 8,000 horsepower trying to escape through the wheels, a slip isn't just a minor annoyance. It is a violent, terrifying event where the wheels spin wildly like a buzzsaw, tearing up the rails and potentially destroying the engine's own machinery. The Q2 was fitted with an advanced anti-slip system and early computer-like device designed to sense a slip and cut power automatically, but the technology was primitive and often could keep up with the raw savagery of the engine. Crews described the Q2 as a slippery, temperamental beast that required the nerves of a bomb disposal expert to handle, because if you pushed it too hard, it would fight back. Despite these challenges, the Q2 South were undeniably successful at their job, hauling the heaviest wartime trains faster than anything else on the rails, and proving that steam power still had undiscovered limits. They were the pinnacle of the super steam era, a time when engineers believed that technology could solve any problem, and that simply adding more power was always the right answer. But the Q2 was born at the very end of an age, a dinosaur that evolved its sharpest teeth just as the meteor was appearing in the sky. It was a machine that was too powerful for its own good, too complex for peacetime economics, and too hungry for a world that was rapidly trying to cut costs. The Q2 had proven it was the strongest engine in the world, but it was about to learn that in the corporate world of railroading, strength is not enough to save you from extinction. The Q2 had conquered the test plant and humiliated the competition with its horsepower. But its greatest enemy wasn't another steam engine, it was a silent, boring, efficient box on wheels that was slowly taking over America. Next, we uncover the tragic and abrupt end of the Q2, and why the railroad destroyed them all. The tragedy of the Q2 is not that it failed, but that it became obsolete so quickly that nobody thought it was worth saving for even a moment. By the early 1950s, the war was over, and the frantic need to move massive amounts of freight at breakneck speeds had cooled down, replaced by a desire for efficiency and lower maintenance costs. The diesel-electric locomotive had arrived, and while a single diesel unit was pathetic compared to the 8.0 horsepower fury of a Q2 diesels could be chained together, did UNT need to stop for water, and did UNT tear up the tracks with hammer blows? The Pennsylvania Railroad, once the proud defender of steam technology, looked at their balance sheets and realized that the Q2 was a financial nightmare. It drank water like a fish, ate coal by the ton, and required specialized maintenance that kept it in the shop far more often than the boring, reliable diesels. It is heartbreaking to realize that the most powerful steam locomotives ever built were not retired with parades or placed in museums with bronze plaques, but were quietly lined up in scrap lines like common junk. The decision was purely mathematical. The scrap value of a Q2 was high because of the massive amount of high-quality steel and copper used in its construction, and the railroad needed cash to buy more diesels. Between 1951 and 1956, all 26 of these magnificent machines were withdrawn from service, stripped of their useful parts, and cut into pieces by acetylene torches. There was no public outcry, no Save the Q2 campaign, and no realization that they were destroying a world record holder. It was just business as usual in an industry that was ruthlessly modernizing. When you look at the big boy today sitting proudly in a museum or steaming down the track under its own power, you are looking at a survivor that was lucky enough to be owned by a railroad that saw the value in PR and history. The Union Pacific kept the big boys around just long enough for the preservation movement to catch up. But the Pennsylvania Railroad was in a financial death spiral and couldn't afford sentimentality. They burned their history to keep the lights on, and the Q2 was the biggest victim of that fire sale. Today, not a single bolt boilerplate or wheel of a Q2 exists. The only proof we have that this 8,000 horsepower Leviathan ever existed is in dusty photographs, blueprints, and the old test plant data that confirms its legendary power. The story of the Q2 serves as a humbling reminder that being the best or the most powerful doesn't guarantee you a place in the future. The Q2 was a machine out of time, a technological marvel that pushed the boundaries of physics but failed the test of economics. proving that in the real world, efficiency almost always beats raw power. It is the forgotten engine, not because it wasn't memorable, but because we destroyed the evidence of its greatness, leaving us with only the legend of a ghost that could outpull the big boy. So the next time you see a video of the big boy and hear someone say it was the most powerful steam engine ever built, you can smile because you know the truth about the Phantom of the Pennsylvania Railroad. You know about the Q2. Now I want to hear from you. You could go back in time and save just one locomotive from the scrapyard. Would you save the powerhouse Q2, or is there another forgotten engine you think deserves to be remembered? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more lost history.